Okay, hello folks. My name is Jason Austin. For those of you who don't know me, which I would presume would be everybody, welcome. I am showing you my face. As you can see, I am not nearly as good looking or smashing or as captivating a speaker as Elise Lewis, but I am co-teaching this course with her this summer, and I figured I would do one lecture or one mini lecture um, on camera the way that she does all of hers, just so that you can see my face and everything. But this will probably be the last time you see my face. I think I'm going to do the rest of the lectures through Adobe Presenter and do it in more of a PowerPoint style. But I did just want to go ahead and do this one live just so that you could kind of see me and get some familiarity with me and everything. Um, I am actually going to be going a little bit out of order. This is going to be the first lecture that you see from me. However, I am actually going to be talking about chapter 27 in your textbook versus chapter 21. So I know that this unit on management starts on chapter 21, but I am going to come back to chapter 21, but I wanted to go ahead and start with chapter 27 because it was going to be honestly the easiest thing for me to go ahead and do on camera as opposed to the Adobe Presenter style. Now, what I'm going to be doing right now, as you guys can already see in your chapter 27 when you open the book, chapter 27 is entitled Managing Communications, Marketing, and Outreach, but when you actually look at the chapter, most of what it's talking about is marketing, which is good. Marketing is very important. But because of that, what I want to do, I'm the type of person who I don't like to spend too much time rehashing what's already in your textbook. I want you guys to read that, get a feel for that in your textbook. Otherwise, there's no reason to make you buy a textbook. So we are actually going to talk a little bit about advocacy, and I'm going to share two resources with you. I'm going to ask you to look at one of those resources on your own time, and then I'm actually going to share information from another resource with you. The first thing when I talk about I want you to look at something on your own time, what I want you guys to do is actually look at the American Library Association's Frontline Advocacy Toolkit. And you can find that actually by Googling ALA Frontline Advocacy Toolkit. And I'm just going to show you the screen really quickly here. Okay. See my messy desk here. And aside from my messy desk, it's just a little screenshot there. You can see Frontline Advocacy Toolkit. This was started as an initiative under former ALA President Camilla Allare. And you will see in that toolkit, you will see advocacy courses and webinars that are online. Also, you'll see some PowerPoints and some different methods of how to advocate for your libraries. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how much this has been updated since it was started in 2010. But I still think that a lot of the information still applies, and whether you guys are dealing with public, school, or academic libraries, there is some useful information in there for all the various types of libraries that you guys may want to work for. The second thing, the second resource that I'm going to share with you during this lecture here is going to be the 5 huge lessons for librarians from the Every Library campaigns. Now, for those of you who have never heard of Every Library is a nonprofit, basically a political nonprofit organization, and they are based out in Chicago. The executive director and founder is Mr. John Croxka, who is a very good guy. I've met him at conferences, had lots of talks with him. Lovely guy. He's very passionate about advocating for libraries, and one thing that he did was for a publication that I am the editor of, he actually put together a nice little list of 5 lessons for library advocacy that anyone who is advocating for libraries would probably need to be conscious of and aware of. He compiled these lessons after working on 26 different ballot initiatives related to libraries. Most of them were bond referendums. And the lessons that he offers here, they are backed by OCLC data. So having said that, we are going to share these 5 lessons right now. And like I said, they are based in the data, so don't think that this is completely anecdotal, but this is someone who reviewed the data and applied it to library initiatives for political campaigns. By the way, every library does maintain a website. They are www.everylibrary.org, and I will put that link as well as the link to the ALA Advocacy Toolkit under the video on my YouTube link. So you are going to have all of that. So having said that, by the way, these 5 lessons, they are generalizable to everyone. They are generalizable to people who use libraries, to people who don't necessarily use libraries but are supportive of libraries, and then these are also generalizable to friends groups, people who donate to libraries, etc., etc. And according to John, these things have worked whether or not he was looking at big cities or small towns, regardless of what region in the United States. So, our first lesson. Voter behavior is driven by belief in and nostalgia for libraries. And again, there is, according to John, OCLC data which supports this assertion. There are going to be many voters in any ballot initiative who have not actually used a library since they've been children, or at least since they've been college students and everything. But that doesn't mean that those people are going to say no to library ballot initiatives. What you have to do when trying to reach out to potential voters is update the nostalgia that they have regarding libraries, and that means sort of play into, sort of tap that nostalgia they have, be it for story times or be it for the library being the place where they could, do some homework, or be in the place where they could learn something new or have their imaginations open in whatever way. You play to that, but then you also update it. You say that this stuff is still going on in the 21st century, but you also let them know how it's being updated, how it's going on today as opposed to yesteryear for today's generation. And then also you need to activate their belief that the American library is still a competent, compassionate, and effective institution. And not everybody is sold on that now. There are a lot of people who seem to believe that libraries have been replaced by digital initiatives or have been replaced by whatever else. There won't be any replacing of libraries. A British librarian whose name escapes me right now said that libraries are going to outlast the internet. And I like that quote, and I believe in that quote. So what you have to do is you do have to maintain some level of professionalism, some level of knowing what you're talking about when you are trying to advocate for libraries. And part of that would just mean being really familiar with your institution. One of the worst things that can happen is when you are asked about things that your institution is doing, but because it's a different department, you are stunned and you're not able to tell that taxpayer what is going on. Don't have too many incidents like that. Be able to answer questions when you can. Now, also, given that, and I have been employed at a library during a ballot initiative, during a bond referendum, and a lot of times you are not allowed to actually on the clock advocate for the bond referendum in the sense of vote yes. It just depends really. I don't know how things are handled. For instance, here, when the Richland Library had its bond referendum about 2 years ago, but when I worked for Forsyth County Public Library in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, we were able to ask questions, but we were not allowed to ask voters on library time to vote yes for an initiative. So you should probably know whether what you are and are not allowed to do. And again, that would be maintaining some of that professionalism. Okay, lesson number 2. Voters look to the passionate librarian as much as they do the effective institution. So we have a long track record of advocacy statements and celebrations within libraries, but it doesn't mean anything if the voters are not able to go into a library and say, this is a compassionate and helpful person who cares about me and cares about what I'm going through and wishes to take some time out of their day or out of their shift to assist me in what I'm doing. So one thing that your public is actually going to want to hear are actually anecdotal stories. Now, I know when we get into higher education, particularly when we get to the master's degree level, we are not always looking for anecdotes. We are looking for evidence. We are looking for data. But your funding public actually does want to hear the feel-good stories. They want to hear those things from librarians. They want to hear the differences that you and your co-workers are making in the lives of their fellow man within and woman within the community. So, be conscious of that. Lesson number 3. Our voters are consumers. They do respond to trends. They do respond to stories, to publishing, to information consumption habits, to new gadgets, and so forth and so on. They respond to this really just as much as they do stories about what's going on in their own libraries. So there are going to need to be times when you are going to need to know the general trends of libraries. For instance, there is a very gross assumption that I have spent a lot of time on Twitter trying to rebut people when I just do library searches on Twitter. People seem to think that library usage has gone down, and the numbers put out by Pew Research just do not support that. And what people need to know are trends, not just at the local library, but national trends. And I think part of the reason for that is that people don't want to put too much funding and too much support into a library in their local vicinity if libraries on the whole are going away. So people need to be reassured that trends in American libraries are going are in a fairly stable, going in a fairly stable direction, which they are. And so don't just know what's going on at your library, but also know what's going on at other libraries. Review the Pew Research data, review any other data that you can when you can. Number 4, our 4th lesson, is that marketing works. We do need to spend money on marketing. We need to market programs, we need to market services, we need to market events, but then we also need to market what our worth is and what our impact is. And so we've got to, and marketing is it's a very difficult thing. It's something that people have a hard time grappling with libraries because we don't have sufficient budgets for it generally. We are amateurs with marketing and public relations generally, but we are charged to not behave as amateurs, but to sufficiently market our library resources. Hopefully you're going to have a PR or public relations and marketing person at the library that you work for. This person may or may not actually have an MLS degree. Again, going back to my previous work experiences at Forsyth County Public in Winston-Salem and at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, We did have marketing slash PR people, and they did not have MLSs, but they were on board with the library mission. But they were people who were trained with marketing and public relations, and that was very, very helpful. But I'll tell you, whoever figures out how to market libraries and what we do effectively, person's going to get paid, because that's something that we all struggle with, and also something that the field just doesn't really share best practices that well with. And then finally, opposition must be engaged. The time is over for libraries to just weather criticism or for others to champion us on our behalf. We need to be the ones to engage opposition. Specifically our directors, I'm hoping that a lot of you guys are going to go into management or are going to go into administration, and you guys are going to have to engage critics. You're going to have all these know-nothing internet critics who get on these news stories online, and they talk about, oh, the library, blah, 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 because I don't use it anymore, and things like that. And they are going to piss you off. But you've got to be able and willing to engage that. And again, that's where knowing your facts come from. You're going to have to know those trends. You're going to have to know what's going on at your library, and you're going to have to be ready to defend when those things come up, and they're going to come up, because as you guys know, there are people who are just not into funding any sort of public service or public good really with the taxpayer dollar. They are all about I don't want to say libertarian, but that's basically what we're talking about, are people who don't believe that these services outside of your basic public safety services are necessary. And those voices who promote and champion austerity, they are just going to get louder and louder and louder as they feel that pinch. I actually feel that the Tea Party movement has sort of died down a little bit, but as you guys know, tea taxed enough already. That was supposedly their thing, was the taxation and whether or not the government is doing too much. But I don't think there's any proof that libraries can effectively operate on a profit motive, and so that's why we will probably always need to be under that umbrella of public good, public service, tax supported, with some grant funding and other things thrown in there. And when you work in a service like that, because you do have to be responsible with taxpayer money, I say that, and then you look at some of these clowns in Washington and what they're doing, but for the most part, you do have to be responsible with taxpayer money, and the way to be responsible is to be transparent about what you're doing and politely engaging opposition and letting the public know the value. So that is the chapter 27 lecture. Most of the lecture, again, is talking about marketing, and I showed you the advocacy toolkit, but if you guys want to, ALA I don't think has its own toolkit for marketing. I could be wrong, but I know that ACRL, they actually do have their marketing toolkit, so that might be something for you guys to look at. And I'm seeing also that I think the association, the American Association of School Libraries, which is a division of ALA, I think they've also got marketing elements within their advocacy toolkit here. So I'm going to put some links below this video here, and just sort of play around with some and find out what you can find in Google as well, because you will find some other different toolkits about all of these various ALA divisions. So there's a lot to be found, and a lot of these strategies are probably going to be put to good use if you familiarize yourself with them, and possibly even do workshops for your coworkers at your libraries where you take the lead, really study this thing, and then share that information with your coworkers. Okay, I look forward to doing some other lectures related to chapters 21 through 26 with you guys, and I hope that you guys have all the success in this class. I'm really rooting for you guys. Take care.